Hey, good morning, everyone. We are going to begin our live stream now. I believe everyone is on. So good morning to you. Thanks for joining us. Some of you were here with us last time. I'll just go over how we did this previously that seemed to work pretty well. So Dr. Polio will have some prepared remarks that he is going to say about our senior recognitions coming up throughout the month of May. And then if you in the chat will let me know if you have a question, everyone will get a chance to ask 2 questions. And if you let me know in the chat, I will call on you and you can ask your questions just to keep it moving. And so we aren't talking over each other and we can have an order going. So I will call on you and you can ask your questions. And I think we are ready. We have one more person joining. We are ready to begin. All right. Good morning, everyone. Dr. Polio, you can begin if you're ready.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Hope everyone is healthy and safe. Jess, feel free to have your cat join us too. I saw your cat come through. So I know when you are working from home, sometimes pets get in the screen or bark, but glad to have you all with us today and joining you as we talk a little bit about, as we've moved into May, what is the end of the year and the time for seniors to recognize seniors. As we know, it's going to be very different this year than it has ever been before for our seniors. First off, to everyone, I want to say to any of our teachers that are watching, Happy Teacher Appreciation Week. One of my favorite events of the year is to be able to celebrate teachers throughout the week. I think we see a lot of yard signs around the city recognizing teachers. I always love going to schools to recognize our teachers for the work that they do. And I think there is nothing more right now that any more greater appreciation than a lot of people have for teachers than during this time right now and what teachers do for us. So I think it's important that we recognize and thank teachers throughout this entire week for the work that they do. And as we look over our accomplishments of NTI, it's been obviously a challenge over the 6 to 7 weeks to create a NTI system that will serve 98,000 students. But we've been very proud of the work that we've done in JCPS and especially proud of our schools, students, parents. Everyone has come together to work hard to meet the needs of our students. And I'm very proud of all of our staff throughout it. And I just want to once again start by saying thanks to all the teachers, school staff for the continuing support of our students. We are now over 4 weeks in to NTI. And once again, our numbers show that we're over 90% participation rate total, and each and every week has been over 90% participation rate. And so we're very proud of that. And as we look to the national scene, we think that for large urban districts, we're seeing other cities that are having great struggles meeting that number. So we're very proud of that. We know we have after today, I believe that we are down to 15 NTI days after today. So I really encourage staff, students, and parents. I always say sprint through the finish line, work as hard as you can to get these last 15 days to finish out the year. But I also want to say I'm especially proud of another group of students in JCPS, and that's the class of 2020. They've shown such resilience, determination, patience through all of this. And I know it is one of the most challenging things that they never thought that they would have to go through to end their high school career this way. Over the past couple days, another of my favorite things of the year is last year when I gave out scholarships, employee scholarships to about 10 seniors, and being able to drive around the city and provide those scholarships was one of the most memorable days of my career. And some of you were there along the way for that. Over the past couple days, we've interviewed finalists, 9 finalists virtually for that scholarship. Unfortunately, I don't think I know we won't be in schools to give it to them, but I can't wait to be able to award these students. But just these 9 students are all seniors in the class of 2020, and to hear their stories of resilience, overcoming obstacles, incredible achievements, it just says to me how great the class of 2020 is. And so obviously we will not be able to do the traditional things at this time that we usually do for our seniors. I think they know that at this time, we won't be able to have the normal proms, celebrations, graduation ceremonies that we've usually had at this time of year. But we do want to celebrate the class of 2020 over the next 3 to 4 weeks, the rest of May, and really use this time to show the great accomplishments of this class, because there are so many great students out there who have achieved such great things, overcome so many obstacles, and I know are going to be successful and do great things in the world. So we really
Dr.
want to
Polio?
celebrate. Yes.
Okay, 1 second before you continue and go into our recognitions. We need to restart your video for a moment. There's an issue with the video stream. We're going to restart this video for you. Can we stand by for just 1 moment, please? All right, thank you, everyone. We just had a quick technical thing we had to adjust. So the picture should be good now, and we can proceed. Thank you, Dr. Polio.
I don't need to start over, do I?
Your sound is good.
At the beginning of announcing our recognitions.
All right, thank you. So the rest of my time, I'll be updating mostly on seniors and then providing a few other updates as well. So first of all, we know that we will not be able to have traditional commencement or graduation ceremonies at the time that we conclude school, which is, as we know, May 27th. So usually we would begin graduation ceremonies that afternoon with in-person graduation ceremonies. We will not be able to do that at this time. First of all, I want to reiterate my commitment to the class of 2020 that we will have commencement ceremonies, in-person commencement ceremonies when it is safe to do that. So we know that will not be in the spring or even most likely in the summer, whether that's late summer that we can have those, fall or even winter. We are committed to having commencement ceremonies for each and every one of our classes. One of the challenges we face is obviously the number of ceremonies and the ways that we celebrate them. So we are working to balance out having a district perspective for graduation ceremonies while also letting schools celebrate in ways while making sure that we continue to focus on social distancing guidelines and guidelines provided by the governor, the CDC, and our health departments, because as always, safety and health is number one for us as we move forward. So first of all, several things I want to highlight that we will be rolling out over the course of May. First and foremost, we will have an individual virtual graduation ceremony for each and every one of our 25. We'll have 25 separate graduation ceremonies. Our team has been working very hard to plan this, and beginning that last week of May, we will have a ceremony, graduation ceremony, streamed on our JCPS YouTube page for every single school. And that will remain online on our YouTube page and on our websites for each and every one of our schools. And soon we'll be releasing that schedule. We wanted to keep the exact same schedule that schools had for graduation ceremonies, but we are going to have to be flexible with that because, as you probably know, when we have traditional graduation and commencement ceremonies in person, we can have 4 or 5 running at the same time in different facilities at the fairgrounds and across town. And we only want one at a time so that we can honor each and every school at one specific time. So we'll be releasing that schedule soon. That virtual graduation ceremony will include, as we will try to make it as traditional as possible virtually. So there will be speeches from the principal, a valedictorian or senior president, who, however, that school chooses to have, whatever they usually do. Seniors will be, we will have a senior speaker of that. We will have pictures, student pictures. Videos will be shown from the school, potentially music that performances, videos that could be played from the school's music department. And each and every graduating senior will have their name read by the principal or by school personnel, however the school chooses to do that. So each and every family will be recognized, student will be recognized as a graduating senior in each of these 25 virtual graduation ceremonies. So that's going to be a lot of work, but we are committed to doing this. Also, on top of that, we know schools are going to have some individual ways in which they will recognize, whether that be yard signs or whether that be ways in which students can come to school to pick up caps and gowns, diplomas, and those type of things. So those are going to be developed by the school. But once again, we will make sure that schools are following those social distancing guidelines in order to do that. That is the most important thing that we can do during this time, is for health and safety. Some of the other celebrations that we're going to do over the course of the next 3 to 4 weeks that I think are going to be exciting, and really to recognize the graduating class of 2020. This Friday night, all JCPS football fields will be lit up for our seniors. So the lights are going to shine from stadiums from 8 to 9 p.m. on Friday in a show of support to all of our seniors. Our schools requested that. We wanted to honor that and light up all of our football fields in honor of our seniors. And we also want to thank the University of Louisville, who is going to light up the Lynn Family Stadium from 8 p.m. until midnight to recognize our seniors. And I think this just highlights we have so many organizations and many of your outlets stepping up to honor the seniors. And so we appreciate you for doing that. A few of our other things that we will be doing. We're excited to say, starting the week of May 18th, 21 TARC buses throughout the city will have banners of each graduating school's class, and we'll be running the names of every single graduating senior with a message of congratulations to the class of 2020. So thank you, TARC, for doing that and being a partner with that. Our communications department, you might have already seen it, is developing an individualized video for all of our 28 schools. So each of our 28 schools will have a personalized video. I did a message on each and every one of those, so that took the better part of a day to do that and have that individualized message from the principals, and then obviously individualized for each school with pictures. So our communications department has worked hard to do that. And I want to also thank our local television stations for running those if you're on here. So I know Wave 3, WHAS, WDRB, and WLKY are all running those throughout the month of May. So we appreciate those local media outlets for honoring the class of 2020 throughout this difficult time for them. And then obviously, you know, we also want to say that the voice of students is very important during this time. So as you know, during our ceremony, students are going to be speaking, but we're also going to see a lot of student messages, speeches that are going to be run throughout the community, where our voices of the class of 2020 can be heard. So hopefully I can stop talking and they can start talking, which we would like to have. But WHAS Radio is airing graduation speeches of several JCPS seniors. I want to recognize the Tony and Dwight Show for running those throughout the weeks ahead. Thank you for that. And WAMZ plans to run 30-second moments from seniors recounting their senior years and thanking their classmates and teachers. So we've got a lot of activity going on with seniors. Clearly, once again, I want to say we will have commencement ceremonies for our seniors as soon as we can do that in large groups and come back together safely. We are committed to giving them that experience whenever that time comes. And so we now have these plans solidified. We will continue to bring you announcements of when those will be and how everyone can access them. I'd encourage everyone to make sure that they tune in and hear the voices of the class of 2020, because I think this is a class that will be different from any class I know in my career and probably any other class in the near future or at any time ever. So we want to honor them the best that we can, and we want our graduating seniors to know that the month of May is for you, and our hearts are with you as you finish this journey, and what an incredible class that you are. A few other updates I just wanted to talk about with JCPS. First of all, I gave the participation rates. We're at 90%, over 90% each of our 4 weeks right now. We continue to work to make sure that kids are engaged and reaching out to students that may not be participating. We want to continue to make sure that participation rate stays over that 90% and gets as close to 100% as possible. But day after day, I see just incredible work from our schools to engage our families and our students. We've served now nearly 750,000 meals. By the end of the time that we are in NTI, we're confident that will increase to over 1 million meals that we will serve by the end of NTI. Then we will transition immediately into our summer meal program. So those meals will not stop. We will continue to serve meals in our summer meals program. We'll make announcements of any additional sites or changes to the sites, but we will begin that immediately. As I said, we have 15 days remaining in NTI. Right now, we are transitioning our planning into summer support for students. I think everyone knows about our backpack league last summer. We had 1,000 students in our backpack league. Our goal was to move to over 5,000 students this year that we would support because of the loss of learning. Unfortunately, it looks at this point like it is unlikely that we will be able to bring students together in person. We'll still monitor that situation into July. Hopefully we will be able to do that, but it is unlikely right now that we will have in-person summer learning opportunities. We're looking at some other options to do that, but we will definitely have, we are working right now on plans to have virtual summer learning for our students, where we provide additional Chromebooks, hotspots if needed. We know it cannot be NTI-like. We know we need to engage kids in different ways in the summer. That's the planning we are doing. But we are planning having virtual summer learning opportunities and engaging opportunities for elementary, middle, and high school students, and hope to engage many thousands of students. And then obviously, as everyone wants to know, we are monitoring what will take place in the fall. Fall planning, it's hard to predict, as we all know, the changes that occur, what will be happening by the time we reach August 12th. But we are planning for a variety of different scenarios that could include starting late. We know that's a potential possibility based upon data and numbers. Starting on time, but possibly having to stop at some point during the year for if there is another an outbreak that we know has been predicted by many models. We are planning in that way to say, if we have to go back into NTI, how can we be much better at that process and not have to take 2 to 3 weeks of planning like we did this time, and instead move immediately into NTI. So we are planning that process. We are also monitoring all of the social distancing guidelines that are being released. Clearly, the logistics around some of those are concerning as to how we will implement them in a large school district. I think any school district has to be concerned with that, but we have a planning team, a task force together to tackle those issues. We know summer PD for staff will look very different than any year before. Traditionally, every single year, nearly every school has faculty retreats where they come together in large groups to have 1-2 days of professional development. Those type of gatherings look unlikely this year. So we are going to have to be much more innovative in our approach to how we do this moving forward, so that we provide that professional development and then continue to monitor how we're going to start the year. But we will be up to the task, whatever that is, and work very hard to implement that. And I apologize. I think I said Lynn Family Stadium, U of L. I'm being told that that is the Louisville FC Stadium. So correction on that. My apologies to Louisville FC. We appreciate your support with the new stadium. So that concludes the updates that we have. And at this time, I'm happy to take any questions that you might have. I think we got to let Renee run back to her seat so that she can get there.
All right, first up is Gilbert Horsey from WDRB.
Gil,
can you go back to the wrestling background?
I pulled that up and I was like, oh crap, I forgot that was my background. Thought I could switch it out before anybody noticed. First off, can you clarify, because at first you said 25 ceremonies with 28 high schools. Is it 25 or 28, or will three like alternative programs that don't have individual ceremonies?
That's correct. There's a couple combination graduations, a couple of alternative graduations that are combined into one ceremony. They might be smaller numbers. So we traditionally have 25 graduations, even though there are 28 different school programs.
So I wanted to ask a little bit more about the schedule for the fall, particularly like if um, health experts say that the risk diminishes as the sun stays out longer and as we head into summer. Did you give any thought, or has the district given any thought to starting earlier, cutting summer down, and maybe going back to school in July?
Well, we have been told that that may be a possibility, um, health-wise, that we could be given that opportunity. There are a lot of logistical concerns with that as well. Um, a lot of employees, partners that we would have to get with. I know that would be difficult, but that is not off the table, Gil. We are talking about, is that a possibility? Would that be mandatory return? Would that be optional return? Are we going to phase in? So there could be some phase ins where some students go to school. So we have heard all of these options as potentials in the past couple of weeks, and are planning for all of those scenarios. So I think it is a possibility. I do think the challenge to that would be enormous. So I'm not saying that it's likely, but it is something we are exploring.
Thank you, Gilbert. Next up is Kevin
I'm
Wheatley
sorry.
from WDRB.
Yeah, Dr. Polly, we've seen some other school districts filming graduating seniors walking across the stage and getting their diplomas. Why was that not a consideration, or was that consideration for JCPS, and why did you ultimately choose to go this route, just having their names read?
Yeah, we talked about some possibilities. We're really concerned about the social distancing, how that would work in large numbers at 25 different ceremonies. And so, I think with our commitment to having an official commencement ceremony later in the fall, that's when in the fall, hopefully. But as soon as we're safe to do that, we will, our graduating seniors will have cap and gown and will be able to walk across the stage and do that with families that will be able to be in attendance. So our commitment to doing that and the potential challenges when it comes to 25 different ceremonies and social distancing guidelines were a concern for us. So we think this is the best way forward for safety and ensuring that we give them a commencement ceremony at some point as soon as we can.
And one more follow-up on the summer learning opportunities. I mean, how different is that going to look, since you said that it can't look like NTI? What are some options that you guys are exploring to differentiate the summer programs from what's going on currently?
Well, what we don't want it to be is very class specific, like you are going into this class, ELA, math, science, and instead probably looking at ways to do it more based on student interest. So for instance, as we did with our backpack league, can we have a potential where students who love robotics or something like that we could provide some type of kit for students to use. We have a teacher that interacts with them on a regular basis. We then support reading and math throughout that process. And so really focusing on student interest, as much like summer camp as we can possibly make it. Virtually makes that very difficult in many ways. But if we can't be in person, we know we have to support in as many ways as we can. And then looking for incentives for students to do that, families and students to be a part of this summer learning. We know it may not necessarily be like a summer program where a student comes 5 days a week for 5 or 6 hours a day, but we know also that as much interaction as we can possibly get with students is a benefit to their learning and achievement in an environment where we know nationally that student achievement is going to be significantly impacted by this crisis. So that is how we are planning right now, that it'll look different. It will be very different from elementary to middle to high. We know as they go up in age, the challenge of engaging becomes a little bit more difficult in a virtual environment. So we are differentiating based on level.
Thank you, Kevin. Next up is Jess Clark from WFPL Radio.
Hello.
Yes.
Hi. So my question, I have a couple. First off, the graduation ceremonies, if you postpone them to, you said you may postpone them to late summer, fall, even winter. I mean, I've seen projections that, we may not be able to in large groups of hundreds until, the spring or even the summer, fall of 2021, depending on when we get a vaccine. I mean, what if, we can't have a commencement ceremony with hundreds or thousands of people? Are you thinking about combining graduations with the class of 2021 or something even later?
Yeah, I mean, we're very cognizant of, I think when we first went into this, everyone was hoping that by mid to late June, even early July, we would be able to do something like a commencement ceremony. I think that we all know that that's not going to be the case now based on guidelines. But, we're going to monitor the situation. I mean, when you look at, whether football will be played in the fall, I mean, and that's thousands of people coming, and that's still up in the air. We know that. But my commitment is to do that. And if that means it's next spring or early summer that we do that, our commitment would be to do a separate ceremony for the class of 2020 as opposed to the class of 2021, even if that means we have a school running back-to-back ceremonies in a year. We're also cognizant of a lot of students that leave for college. So as we plan this, that might be out of town, we're very thoughtful about how we can do it where we maximize the most amount of students who can come back for that ceremony. So we're committed to doing that. Obviously, we'll have to follow the health guidelines of when we can meet.
Okay, and then another question about the fall. Have you seen the draft guidelines from the CDC? They had some draft guidelines that came out last week, desks 6 feet apart, dividing students into different groups that don't mix. Are those kinds of things that the district, is it possible to have desks 6 feet apart in JCPS schools? I guess is one big question.
We had a conversation a week or two ago. I don't know when that was, but my concern about some of the logistics
right
with that. And I'll just give another example. If a guideline is that students are given a temperature check as they walk in the door, most of our students get on a bus to come to school. And so if they've already been on that bus with 40 or 50 other students, I'm not so sure checking the temperature at the door. I think that purpose has already been defeated. And so now do we have to do that at the bus stops? And then, I talked about what do you do with them? But, alternate days or alternate weeks, I think really becomes a family issue and a work issue and a childcare issue. How does that happen? And then clearly 6 feet apart with desks and transitions in between classrooms and lunches and breakfast. I mean, all of those are major challenges. The larger the district, I think the more significant the challenge becomes. So that doesn't mean we won't step up to meet the challenge. I felt like when we first went into NTI or thought we might go into NDI, we didn't, I stood up here and said, I don't know how a large district is going to do that. I think we stepped up and met that challenge. So we'll do what we need to do, but I can't underscore enough the concerns I have about the logistics of a lot of those recommendations.
When do you think parents will have a good idea of what the school year will look like in terms of those kinds of protocols?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that is out of our hands. I mean, a lot of that is the recommendations that we're giving when we go into the different phases. We'll continue to obviously work closely with the health departments, the governor, and continue to work that. Hopefully, we will provide updates along the way. But one thing we know about this crisis is things change often. And so we have to be flexible and be ready to do that and make changes if necessary. But You know, obviously we want that to be as soon as we possibly can, but obviously we have to wait for guidelines as well.
Thank you, Jess. Next up is Carrie Grace from WLKY.
Hey there, Dr. Polio. I have a couple of questions for you about NTI.
Okay.
You mentioned that there's been 90% participation with NTI. My question is, what does the district consider participation?
Well, we said over 90%. Every week has been over 90%. We follow the Kentucky Department of Education guidelines for participation. Participation means that the student has been in contact with a teacher at least once during that week period. So we have to report participation rates. When a teacher is in contact or a school is in contact with a student about instruction, that is considered participation. So as I've said in other of these press conferences, we know that's not necessarily the benchmark that we want for learning. So participation means that over 90% of the students were in contact, whether that be Google Classroom, Google Meets, some type of video chat, phone call, submitting an assignment. All of those are considered participation. But we also know we want it on a daily basis and every single day. We know, I haven't seen the numbers as recently, but we knew 86,000 students logged on to their Google Classroom in week 2. And so we're learning a lot as well about how the different ways in which students can interact with teachers on Google Classroom. We found that cell phones, more students than we expected are able to interact with their teachers via Google Classroom, although that's probably not the best for submitting assignments and those type of things. So participation is once a week in contact with someone at the school, an instructor, based on that instruction, and that's guidance from the Kentucky Department of Education.
One more thing, it's come to our attention that someone might be addressing Metro Council about the lack of participation tonight. Do you have any thoughts on that potential conversation and the fact that there may be some sort of discussion held about students and their participation in NTI?
I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with what that discussion will be. I'll say again, I think our participation rate compared to a lot of other cities that we're seeing is we don't want any student not participating, but we've been pleased with the participation numbers going into this based on what we've seen nationally.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Carrie. Next up is Paul Miles.
Hey, good morning, Doctor. Just a quick question. When will the seniors actually receive their diplomas and/or caps and gowns?
So that will be a school by school decision. It's the same way, we want this to be similar to the way, as much as we can, the way things are done on a yearly basis. So on a yearly basis, the district schedules graduation ceremonies for our seniors in collaboration with the schools and the time. But then schools do a variety of different ways to recognize their students. And so schools will be sharing that information, how students will be able to pick up their caps and gowns, how they'll be able to pick up their diplomas. Our guidance will be to follow the social distancing guidelines, which we know that last week of May, although there is an increase in the amount of people that can come together, there's still some very strict guidelines with social distancing and masks being worn and the different things that we know are going to be still a part of that last week in May. So schools will be providing that information to families. We're just going to ensure that they follow social distancing guidelines in any of those events that they have.
Paul, did you have another question? Mandy McLaren from the CJ.
Hi, two questions. Were there any expenses from like reserving locations for ceremonies that the district is not going to be able to recoup, or are you all set on that front?
That's a good question. I believe I need to check on the contracts we have. Most of our, we have come down to, I think nearly all of them are either at a JCPS facility or the fairgrounds. And I'm going to say I believe this. Our contracts are for a number of events per year. I believe it's on a yearly basis, so we can use those at different times. But I would defer to, let me check the contract to make sure on that our contract with the fairgrounds is on a yearly basis. But we'll get that information to you. I know we use them for other events, whether that be showcase of schools, professional development, things like we had, we've always been there for our deeper learning conference, which we won't be able to have this year as well. So we'll get the specifics on that contract language to you, but I believe it's based on a number of events per year.
Okay, and then the other question was, can you say about the number of students that are on track to graduate and whether or not you think NTI has affected that number at all? And I could see it going both ways. Either students didn't have the chance to raise their grades, or maybe the opposite end of the spectrum, NTI has actually helped because you don't have to deal with the year-end exams.
Yeah, I think it's, at this point, you know, those numbers are collected at the school level with their seniors that are on track. So I don't have that specific number. I've been in conversations a lot with high school principals in this type of forum. And they're working hard. I mean, they are really working hard to make sure that each and every senior is on track. They've put staff members on that, tracking seniors. I know we have, I'm not going to say, you know, we're still working to make sure every senior is there. But in conversations, anecdotally with our principals, they're very confident that the vast majority of students are getting there and are going to graduate. Now, how that compares to other years, we'll have to see how that plays out in the weeks to come. We have heard stories of students who may not have been as engaged, especially in high school, in the traditional high school setting, and are actually flourishing or doing better than they would have in this model. Now, it's hard to judge what that means achievement-wise, but are actually more engaged than they may be sitting in a classroom. But we will see how that goes. But, you know, the word I'm getting from our principals and school staff as they track each and every one, and I've seen how they do that, is they're working hard to get every senior there. So I'm confident we'll see our students in the same numbers graduating. We'll have to see how that translates into graduation rate, though, as we finish up.
Is there a plan for, or concern at all, I guess, if you had students that were not on track to meet their credits before school shut down abruptly, and then you've lost contact with them? Is there a concern that, you know, those are just kids that the district's never going to be able to get back?
I mean, yes, that's a concern always. I mean, you know, sometimes, especially as a high school principal, when you get, you know, kids that are 18, 19 years old, as you've done a lot of research on that, keeping them connected to school can be a challenge at times, especially when they're facing a variety of life events, you know, and the need to work and do other things. That can be a challenge. So obviously not having the day-to-day contact increases that concern. But one of our, and I'll go back to this, when we talked about grading, was if a student gets an incomplete, if they are not, if they do not do the NTI and that incomplete is marked, we want to continue to reach out to them into the summer and even into the fall. And so if that means that that a student has not been in contact with us over the past 6 or 7 weeks, but we can get them in the summertime and move that incomplete to a passing credit, and then they graduate, we support that wholly. So, you know, we might have some seniors that they end up being a part of the commencement ceremony because they graduate in the summer or the fall, but we're committed to that work whenever that time frame may be, even the summer or the fall.
And do you or Renee have a number on the number of seniors across the district this year?
Yes, I'm sure we can. I don't have it. I know the estimate. You know, it's in the range of 6,500, but I think we can get that exact number to you.
All right, thank you.
A couple of you asked, I'll follow up and provide that exact number to you here after the press conference. That was it for the list. If there are no more questions, we can conclude. Thank you everyone for being here.
No question from our manual student? I'll give you time. You all right? You sure?
Okay, well, I did have a quick question.
Well, then you ask it.
Is there any district plans, or are you going on a more school by school basis for seniors like myself to return books and other materials that you got from school?
Yeah, great question. That's one of the biggest questions I get is returning into school. So we've been waiting on those guidelines, social distancing guidelines. And, you know, once again, safety is really important and health is really important. And, you know, we want to make sure that that happens first. But we know that staff will need to get into school buildings to get a lot of their things that they need, and then especially students as well. And so we will provide guidelines to schools, and then we will allow the schools to schedule times for students to come in, short period of time, obviously not long period of time, to pick up any items that still may be in schools, return any items that they need to the school, and then finally staff can come in and do that too. So we're anticipating around that last week in May or first week in June to schedule staff and students to be able to do that. Go ahead, Mandy.
Did you have another question?
Yeah, thank you. Well, we've got you on here, and we've, you know, everybody's been reporting, unfortunately, the gun violence that's been happening and how it's been affecting a lot of teenagers and JCPS students. And I guess while we have you on here, I'm just curious how the district is handling with those losses when schools are out. And I know that affects schools and it affects students. And as far as supporting students and teachers during this time, and then, you know, what, if anything, can the district or the community be doing better to keep kids engaged and from falling into troubling activity while schools are closed?
Yeah, that's a good question. And obviously it's heartbreaking every time that we see that one of our students, and 2 times over the course of the past few months, they've been students that were students at Doss when I was the principal there. Now they were freshmen when I was the principal there, and obviously are much older now, and I've been gone for 3 years. But that has a huge impact, and that has happened way too much in my career over the course of 24 years, having to see that and hear that on the news. And so, you know, that's heartbreaking for us all, that anytime students do that or a part of anything, loss of life, it's heartbreaking. So I think a couple things. First of all, Mandy, I think it speaks to how important the services that JCPS provides at the school, the relationships, the interactions, the programs that are provided at schools. So we know that we still have these issues in communities throughout the year, but clearly it's been magnified during this time away when students do not have access to teacher employee relationships and to the social programming that we provide in JCPS schools. So number one, I think that is critical. And we now know how critical that is, and to even increase those. And community programming is so important. I mean, so many of the community programs that are out there to provide support to kids on a daily basis are not being able to function and operate like we normally would. And I think that's left a void whether that be the programming that we can provide or community can provide, and we do as much as we can virtually, but we know that's very challenging, especially with at-risk children. So as we, I think most importantly, we need to think about how we can do this even better when we come out of this. And then obviously learn lessons from this. And so when we come back, if we have to go back into an NTI setting, that we look to ways to collaboratively, community and school district, to provide services to kids the best way that we possibly can without being able to collectively come together. I don't think nationally, I think this is not just an answer for the school district. I think this is where community collaboration and school district collaboration are so important to figure out how we meet the needs of our kids when we can't physically be involved together in school or programming for our kids.
Dr. Polio, there was one more question from Gilbert Corsi.
There. Hey, it was a follow-up. Actually, I have, while I got the senior on the line too, from, is it Manuel or Male? I want you to be thinking about, you're the first kind of student to hear about this senior plan. So after Dr. Polio answers my question, I'd like you to react to how he's laid out this online graduation process moving forward and your reaction to it as a senior. But Dr. Polio, my question for you was a follow-up to my colleague from WLKY and comments you made earlier about participation being at 90% and how that is better than some other school districts, urban school districts. I wanted to ask, do those other urban school districts that are seeing a lower participation rate have the same metric? Is participation in those communities a one interaction a week threshold?
No, I don't think that's the case. So I don't, this is, I want to say it's more anecdotally when I talk about reading other stories from across the country, when we hear things like 20% of students, high school students in certain districts have not been, the school district has not been able to be in touch with them in any way. So no, I mean, state to state is very different. Now, Kentucky is all the same. But I don't want to necessarily say that I'm comparing ourselves to any other district with hard data. I'm just saying anecdotally what we read in many of the national stories. We are seeing, and we read those early on in NTI when we were planning. So that above 90% participation rate is better than maybe what we had our concerns about when we first went into this. But no, it is not. I can't say what other states, how they measure participation rate.
To clarify, when you say that JCPS is performing better than other urban school districts, if that threshold in another urban school district is, they got to have 2, 3, or 4 interactions a week, is that a fair comparison?
No, I'm not saying, once again, I'm not saying I'm directly comparing to any districts. I'm just saying, once again, anecdotally, when we're reading some of the articles out there, it was a major concern for us going in that would we only see 70 or 75% participation rate. And we were pleased, especially right off the bat, how many kids are interacting. Once again, I'll say this, Gil, just the fact that 86,000 kids were in their Google Classroom working with their teachers says that the vast majority of our kids are well over that 1 per week interaction.
Hey, Gilbert, I think what we'll do, and if anyone else wants to talk to Issa afterwards, we can arrange that for you guys to connect if you'd like to talk to Issa some more.
Issa's a reporter, aren't you? You're the one that reports, aren't you?
She's also a student.
That's right.
Role today.
She is. Gil, she might have taken offense to you saying, or who said male? Somebody said, did you say male, Gil?
I wasn't sure if you had said male or manual. I'm writing a story and engaging in a press conference at the same time.
I have a feeling Issa would not want to be, that she would oppose that one. As male students would if you said manual. So it goes both ways.
All right, Issa, I'll follow up with you and we can connect. If there's any media that would like to talk to Issa from a student perspective, we can connect you guys. All right, If there are no other questions, I think we can conclude. All right. Everyone,
Thank you,
thumbs up.
guys. Appreciate
Thank
your
you guys
time.
so much.
Everybody stay safe.
Appreciate it. Thank you.